Welcome back to looking at the Creed. Last time we looked at that first section, I believe in God, the Father Almighty. Now we move on to the next phrase, Creator of heaven and earth. That seems a pretty obvious thing. If we believe in God, and He's the Father Almighty, then yes, He created heaven and earth. But why that's there is quite interesting, really, and although the reason is different than a couple of thousand years ago, it addresses something very important in our own present day. First of all, to say that heaven and earth means all things. It's one of those verbal phrases which means that God made all things, not just the earth and not just heaven. So it includes the sun, Venus, Mars, all of the rest of it, the Ood belt, anything you want. God creates absolutely everything. And it also means as well that not only did God create it and then, if you like, leave his creation. So I could create a work of art, could paint a picture, shove it on a wall, and then walk away from it. No. When God creates something, because of the nature of God, then he is existent, being itself. So when he creates something, he doesn't just create it and then leave it. He creates it and sustains it. It is because of his will, his continual will, that things which he has created continue to exist. That sounds a bit complicated, but going back to me painting a picture. I paint a picture, but I always have that ability to destroy it at any single moment. If that is true, then it continues to exist because I want it to exist. If I walk away from it, belongs to somebody else, or I walk out of a room and it stays on the wall, then it has an existence which is independent of me. This is not the case with the things that God exists. God creates, sorry. God exists, creates all things, and holds everything in being. If he didn't want something to exist, then it would stop existing. So God creates and holds things in being. Which, by the way, includes us as well. God created us. In a physical way, the moment of our conception, through the actions of our mother and father, a new life comes into being. But a life is only a life in a human context, if it has a human soul. And this is God's part of creation. At that moment of our conception, every single one of us, at that moment God creates an individual soul and unites it with that flesh, which has now been fertilized. At that moment then, this is a human being. This is your soul. Your soul began to exist then. Your mother and father have an essential part in creation, but so does God. So I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, means that God creates all things and holds all things in creation as well as us. So a few moments ago I said that this addressed an issue in the early church, thousands of years ago, which is not really an issue for us. And that is that at the time, when people looked around, philosophers and theologians and the like, when they looked around, they thought that the earth was a bad place. This created order was a bad place, that it was wicked, full of sin, full of awful things that happened. And they couldn't believe that an all-powerful and an all-good God could create it. And so they thought, well, it must be somebody else, a minor God, a lesser God, somebody else, something else. And so this lesser being, that created the world, and therefore the world is not good because God is good. The world then is something which is tainted, corrupt. This led to lots of strange beliefs, such as that either we had to despise the world, despise the flesh, because it wasn't worthy of the nobility of the divine part of us, the soul of us. And so therefore we had to get rid of the flesh. Either we did it by just hating it, and then not caring about it, or in beating it so much and neglecting it so much that we decided to focus only on the spiritual part of us and ignore the rest. This, of course, is not true. If God creates the world, then the world is good. But God happens to have set it up in a way that he wants it to exist. And he set it up so that there are natural disasters that lions will come along and bite little girls, and the dogs will bite little boys or whatever. That the human world is made up of natural things and natural evils that are beyond us, but God has made them. Things in and of themselves are good, following the plan and the pattern that God has made. It's not that this world is evil and we have to run from it or flee from it, but rather that we must see it for what it is. It is part of the creation that God has made for our sanctification and for our delight. We no longer have that view of the world. By saying that God created the heavens and the earth, the Creed then says that you lot who think that the world is bad, stop it. God created it, not anyone else. But for us, the temptation is very different. The temptation now is to think that the world is so good that we are merely a part of it. We are merely animals who happen to be able to think and rather good, ruthless predators. And that the world in itself almost has a life and a stability which exists not only apart from us, but even apart from God. So in the 1970s, when James Lovelock came along with the Gaia hypothesis, it said that the world, and all of creation really, was an enclosed system that would regulate itself. And the only thing which had stuffed it up was us. Now this idea of creation puts it separate from God. God is no longer in charge of it. God no longer even sustains it. It exists in and of itself. And it has an obligation almost, a sense almost of itself, that we, human beings, have to subject ourselves to. So there are too many of us, so let's not have any children. We're going around and we're eating too much and destroying the planet, so let's make sure that we don't. Let's limit the number of people that there are. When you get a bit old and a bit doddery, we'll just kill you because you're not doing anything good. You're not contributing. We have become a parasite on the face of the earth, and we have become not just a part of the problem, but a cause of the problem. In a real way, if human beings weren't there, how beautiful and lovely nature would be. This new heresy, you can see it everywhere nowadays. You can see it in the subtext of television programs, of the environmental movement even, some wings of it, Extinction Rebellion, all of those kind of things place human beings at a subordinate position to the rest of creation. At best, we're part of it. At worst, we are actively destroying it, and therefore should be got rid of ourselves. If God is the creator of heaven and earth, and therefore everything, then he has created us. And he has created us, of course, as part of creation, but as the summit of creation. We are not one thing above any. We are the peak. We are created in the image and likeness of God, unlike anything else. We have rights and obligations which elevate us from all of the rest of creation. If that dog comes along and bites a boy because the boy's poking it with a stick, then guess what? The dog is not morally responsible for what he has done. The boy is for being stupid and poking a dog with a stick. The lion comes along and bites a girl. Well, we might probably end up killing the lion, but that's what lions do. We human beings are responsible for our actions, and responsible for the world, and responsible for the creation which God has put into our hands to look after and to care for. We are not just part of this creation, we are the peak of it, higher even than the angels. We need to keep this in mind. Otherwise, we will not strive for nobility. We will simply lower ourselves into being no better than the beasts of the field or the birds of the air. Our new heresy is an interesting one, but it's heresy. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, creator of me, with my responsibilities and my joy in the world that he has created. But I, and you, and every human being that exists, existed, or has, or will exist, is the summit, the source, and in a strange way, the ultimate joy of our Creator.